rolling tumors to roaring lampooners, the Tigers on a Roll show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome in, Tigers fans. A fun night of Auburn sports, if you were able to keep up with them, especially Auburn basketball out of Birmingham. That was streamed on YouTube, and they had the booth call on War Eagle Plus. All in all, I thought the Stephen Pearl era kicked off rather well. Obviously, Auburn dropped that game in overtime, but starting that off in Birmingham with a little home court advantage in a low stakes overtime exhibition loss. The number 20 Tigers fell 97-95 to quote unquote shorthanded Oklahoma State. The most alarming maybe takeaway is the defensive struggles. Auburn surrendered 97 points, obviously, and for perspective, last year's Final Four team gave up season high 93. So exceeding that total in an exhibition game, may not be cause for alarm, but allowing that type of scoring at any point in the season against a team that was shorthanded to end it, missing some key rotation guys, could certainly raise some red flags. But Pearl stated after the game that they were unable to contain the Oklahoma guards, who were really quick. They could get downhill when they needed to, actually really at will from the look of it. And that certainly compromised our paint defense. That was Anthony Roy and Isaiah Coleman, who combined for 56 points against Auburn. And that was before we lost what is quote unquote our big. But anyway, Pearl said the defensive result was 100% on him, which I like the accountability, but we will definitely need to figure out a way to get a bit bigger in the paint, or we're going to have to rely even more heavily on draining quick and consecutive three-point shots game in and game out throughout the season. But on the other side of the court, speaking of the three-pointers, potentially getting hot throughout the season, on the other side of the court, the offense found some success, certainly. Senior transfer Keyshawn Hall proved that he can certainly be a foundation on this offense. He led Auburn with 26 points, 8 rebounds, and Hall had shown some elite clutch ability in that game last night. He forced overtime on a and one with 26 seconds left in regulation. And, I imagine we're all content seeing his performance last night. Auburn seems to have been able to found a reliable high volume scorer, which I think going into this season, we were pretty much just confident that was going to be Tahaad. Which brings us to, Hall's emergence, kind of puts into question Tahaad's cold streak that we saw last night. He finishes last night's game with 17 points, but really inefficient shooting, 4 for 16 from the field, and 2 for 9 from 3-point. He stacked most of his points, obviously, from the free throw line, which I'll take that. We've got a couple guys that can absolutely drive and draw some fouls. So, they're always threats to score. Last night, unfortunately, we were just a little cold, but all in all, I'll take that. I'll take opportunities at the free throw line throughout the season. But again, this is another one, exhibition game. I don't think there's a huge cause for concern with Tahaad shooting last night. Certainly ice cold for the most part. But, it seemed to me early on that they were just trying to hit some deeper looks just kind of for fun. And I was not very impressed with the inbound play at the end of the game, because I think they ultimately did want to win this game. I think that Oklahoma State took this, a lot more seriously than Auburn did. Like, this seemed to be Oklahoma's early season Super Bowl, while Auburn was playing rotation guys the whole time. It was something like our highest volume player was like 26, 24 minutes or something like that. And then like they had quite a few guys in the 45s, or maybe ours was 30 minutes, and they had quite a few that were 45 plus. So they definitely didn't want to drop this game, and I think that we were fine just getting guys minutes and having that team gel kind of in real time in a game environment. But again, like I said, I wasn't worried about the 3-point shooting, but I was not very impressed with their ability to inbound that ball late. I think that it was really, really sloppy. But the lack of the threes it probably won't be a recurring issue. And in an exhibition game like this, there's an opportunity to throw up some lower percentage shots and see what happens, which I think is ultimately what they were doing. And you know what? It's always good to get it out of your system and kind of hone that in and tune those shots up, because those are going to be really, really important with the way that Auburn's going to want to play basketball this season. They're a little bit smaller this year, so they're going to need to go fast, drain threes, and score on transition and whatnot. So, I think that, of course, as an exhibition game, it was probably pretty good practice for the boys to get out there and see how they feel about taking some of those shots. And some of those shots ended up helping Auburn rally. Auburn rallied a few times. At one point, trailed by 8 in the second half and recovered from a 5-point deficit early in the overtime period. But ultimately, the loss in overtime came down to just their inability to get some stops in the final seconds. So, Tahaad tied the game at 95 late with a 3-pointer, and then they had Jalen Curry drive and scored on a layup with like 8 seconds left. But Auburn's ability to rally offensively was definitely wasted with the defense's persistent inability to execute any semblance of a reliable defensive stop. Now, the one at the end of regulation was big for sure. It got us a little bit more time to see what we could do. But every time that we took a lead, which was like for the most part 1 point, every time we took a lead, we were never really able to run away with it, which last year's team could have, and they could control clock, but we weren't really able to run away with it because we couldn't protect the paint. And the way that we need to play basketball this year is going to prevent us, I think for the most part, is going to prevent us from controlling clock and making teams play to our speed. I think that we're going to need to try to, keep up. And if we ever are running away with it, it's not going to be by 20 something points, It'll probably be smaller margins than we've been used to the last couple years. Speaking of the last couple years, I mean, we lost to Barry. I think it was in 17, but we lost to Barry in an exhibition game and then ended up going to a Final Four. So, 17? No, 21, whatever it is. Anyway, we lost to Barry a couple years ago. And it's D2, and they ended up being able to make a really good run at it in March that year. And I wouldn't say Oklahoma State's a bad team whatsoever. They're definitely not on the level of a D2 team. So dropping this game in Boutwell confirms kind of Auburn possesses that fighting spirit that we expect of them. And they've got an offensive backbone. And with the size issues that we have right now, we're going to need them to stay rigid on that game plan that they have and keep playing quick and taking chances and see if we can't run up the score just like some teams might be able to get on us, driving it deep. So, last night's matchup certainly kind of had some defensive flaws there, but that was due to the same size disparity as why our offense needs to play quicker than they have in the last couple of years, which we'll see. Again, exhibition match. Speaking of Auburn's next opportunity to prove their prowess, if you will be in their final exhibition game against Memphis on October 30th in Atlanta's State Farm Arena at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. And that matchup will be a rematch of the 2024 Maui Invitational Championship game that Auburn won 90-76. And this is going to bother me because I misspoke. I need to look up when that Auburn-Barry game was because that just doesn't sound correct. Let's see here. That was 17. Wow, I was right. How about that? Interesting. Certified ball knower. All right, but that'll be Auburn's next game is another preseason exhibition, and we played them in 2024 and won 90-76 with a team that ultimately stuck together. Tahaad right now is the only returning scholarship player from last year, so it's going to be interesting to see how we handle that. Memphis is obviously going to look a little bit different, but we got one game in Birmingham and we've got one game in Atlanta. That's essentially home court advantage for us. Whether or not it's a neutral site doesn't really matter. Last night was actually really interesting. They only have about 2,500 seats in Boutwell, so it was intimate to say the least. A little quiet. DJ was not amazing, but it was a really cool environment for them to get invited to, via that Nike Hibbett sponsorship and things like that. So going to Atlanta is going to be definitely a more electric environment with some better, home court advantage. And I think that is going to be a really fun matchup to watch. Again, that matchup is October 30th at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. And we're going to go on a bit of a recap here. We did Tigers on the Prowl yesterday, but we're going to recap some scores from the last few days because we are Tigers on a roll, and we are covering all of the Tigers that are on rolls. Unfortunately, this week, including football and a couple other sports, not really on any great rolls right now, but fighting tooth and nail nonetheless to see if they can't improve their circumstances before the end of their respective seasons. We have Auburn volleyball losing to number 3 Kentucky 3-1 in Lexington. Soccer dropped the Iron Bowl of Soccer 4-3 in Tuscaloosa last Friday, and swim and dive beat West Florida at home and then finished second in men's competitions and third in women's competitions at the SMU Invitational, which concluded on Saturday. Let's see if the Tigers will turn some of these close games into wins this week and get themselves on a roll. Meanwhile, as always, War Damn Eagle and stay on a roll.